All right, let's go ahead and get this session started. Good morning. It's still morning, right? Yes. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for being here for PolitiFest 2020. My name is Ashley Rodriguez. I'm the Development Director for Voice. We're so happy to have you here for this very important conversation. I'll let the moderator get to introducing panelists, but I have a few housekeeping messages first. In case you're unfamiliar with Voice of San Diego, we are a nonprofit newsroom that does reporting that holds public officials accountable, and we do our best to get the public the information they need to be informed, engaged citizens. We also rely on the support of the public, so thank you to everyone that has supported us as a member by buying your ticket to PolitiFest. These types of things support us all year round. And a big thank you to our sponsors of PolitiFest, the Google News Initiative, who helped us turn this physical event, what was a pre-COVID physical event, into a week-long virtual event. The University of San Diego College of Arts and Sciences for underwriting student tickets, so students across San Diego can be here for free. We have over 300 that attended this week. The San Diego Foundation for bringing us the community conversations and sponsoring those, as well as our other sponsors, Cox Communications, SDG&E, the Atlantis Group, the San Diego Retired Employees Association, the San Diego Democratic Party, Business for Good, and the City Heights Community Development Corporation. So thank you to all of our sponsors. This session will be recorded, so it'll be available later. We will send all that info to you. We have a couple more sessions for the day, but our last ones start at 12, so make sure to stick around and catch the last set of sessions. You can also use the CVent platform to interact with other participants, speakers, and get to know our sponsors better, so be sure to do that. And we would be remiss if we didn't say engage on social media, use that hashtag PolitiFest 2020. Get engaged on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, and all that good stuff. Now I'm pleased to introduce Enrique Morones to take this conversation on. Here we go. Go for it.
Well, good morning, everybody. I'm Enrique Morones. Actually, the moderator is Sechi. I don't know if Sechi has joined us yet. Sechi, are you there?
Oh, sorry, I was on mute. I'm here.
All right. Well, Sechi is actually our moderator. So the wonderful Sechi will kick us off.
Thank you. Well, welcome everybody. I am so happy you're able to make it to this panel about Black and Brown relations and how we need to work together. So I will start out introducing our amazing panelists. All right, so we have Enrique Morones. So where did I write that? So Enrique Morones is the founder of UNIDA. Sorry, hold on, I'm reading the wrong thing.
UNIDA.
Okay, now I have the right one. Oh, there we go. All right. So he's the founder of UNIDA. Oh, what did I write here?
Right, it's Gente Unida.
Okay. Enrique is a native San Diegan and lifelong human rights activist. He's the founder of Gente Unida, House of Mexico, and Border Angels. He is the podcast host of Buen Hombre and Magnificent Mujer. my Spanish pronunciation is not that great. And also the author of Power of One. He is also a commissioner for San Diego County's Human Relations Board and serves on San Diego's Anti-Hate Coalition. He has a BS from SDSU in International Marketing, a master's from USD in Executive Leadership, and an honorary doctorate from the University of Guadalajara. And in 2009, he received Mexico's National Human Rights Award directly from the President of Mexico. Oh my goodness. He was formerly Vice President of Latino and Diversity Marketing for the San Diego Padres. In his career, he has debated the likes of Bill O'Reilly, Tucker Carlson, Sean Hannity, Laura Ingraham, and many more. Oh my gosh. You went right into the Lions Den. That's amazing. All right, so that is Enrique. Enrique, I will let you add to that introduction before I introduce the next person.
There's nothing else to add. I just want to thank you, Sechi, and also Yusef for joining us, as well as the Voice of San Diego. I'm glad to be back at Polyfest. Merci beaucoup. Gracias. You did a great job.
Thank you. Thank you. Sorry, my notes were a little messed up earlier. It took me a while to find the right place. All right, so next we have brother Yusef Miller. He is the founder of Mosque Against Trafficking, MAT for short, and also the co-founder of North County Equity and Justice Coalition. Yusef is also a member of the board of Islamic Society in North County, Escondido, and the Tri-City Islamic Center, the Interfaith Community Outreach Liaison, and teaches Islamic lecture series. Upon retirement from the armed services, Yusef filled his time with social justice activities. Yusef continues to stand with border communities in marches and rallies at the border for asylum seekers and against family separation. As a member of the Interfaith Worker Justice San Diego, Yusef supports local unions as they fight for a livable wage and dignity on the job. So thank you so much, brother Yusef. Now, I see you all over the city, all over the county. I don't know where you get time to sleep. Even Enrique, these two men don't know where they get time to sleep or eat. They're all over the place all the time trying to fight for so many different rights. So thank you all very much for your service to our communities. Yusef, would you like to add anything to your introduction?
No, you did a great job, Sechi. Thank you.
All right. Now, my own introduction is short. I am the board president of Activist San Diego, and I am also a diversity, inclusion, and equity consultant and trainer here in San Diego. And I build bridges that drive inclusion and equity. And at Activist San Diego, where I'm board president, we raise a public awareness about systemic injustices, and we're driving transformational action. I'm also a columnist for the San Diego Union Tribune, and I have worked at Caterpillar and Intuit as diversity and inclusion leader. And I have a degree in chemical engineering, but now I do diversity work. Very interesting transition. And I'm so excited to be here with all of you. Is there anything else anyone would like to know about me? Perhaps my social security number or my credit card number or my bank account number? All right, good, good. I'm glad no one wants that information, because if you got it and you stole my identity, everyone's gonna be after you. You have the IRS after you, you have debt collectors after you, you have America's Most Wanted show after you. So don't take my identity. All right. So we're going to get started. I am going to ask Mr. Enrique and brother Yusef some questions, and they're going to answer. And then we'll open it up to Q&A after that. Does that sound good for everyone? Thumbs up? All right, excellent. Now, I have never done a virtual panel before, so I'm learning here. Okay, so the first question is for Mr. Yusef. What are some early examples of Black and brown relations in our history?
Well, that's a good question. Black and brown relations has spanned our history from the beginning of this nation all the way up until today. And I would like to start on a historical narrative and a timeline, and I will start in Mexico. You know, we here in San Diego are a border community, and we have a lot of our Mexican brothers and sisters and other people of Latino descent, brown descent from South and Central America here with us. And it's important that we have this topic. Let's start with the second president of Mexico, Vincent Guerrero. He's of mixed heritage. He has a Black heritage and Mexican heritage, and he's the second president. And in February 14, which is normally Valentine's Day here, it's when 1829 they abolished slavery in Mexico. Mexico abolished slavery in 1829. that won't reach America until 1865, and then to the 13th Amendment. So when this happens in 1829 in Mexico, 1/3 of its population is emancipated. So this is a freedom. This is a black and brown work that freed the people of African descent in Mexico from this bondage. Now that was 1829. It wouldn't be till 1830 until Texas eventually, they give them an extra year to get rid of their slaves. Texas at this time is still part of Mexico, but they have this territory there. A lot of Americans, legal and illegal Americans crossing the border into Mexico, into this area, territory called Texas, and they're bringing their slaves. So slavery is already abolished. So by 1835, they still haven't gotten rid of their slaves. Mexico makes a move to centralize their government, and they take action against the American immigrants who still want to hold Black people as property. So in 1835, we have the Battle of the Alamo. A lot of people heard of the Battle of the Alamo, and in America, we teach it a little different than the way it actually happened. We have different emphasis on this battle. And the battle was for the most important thing is to get rid of slavery in Texas. So the defenders of the Alamo were actually defending their right, quote unquote, right to own other people as slaves. But our Mexican brothers and sisters, they fought against that to liberate the institution of slavery in all of its forms. So that led to Texas eventually getting help from the US, breaking away from Mexico and becoming eventually a slave state in the US. But it was about slavery, the Battle of the Alamo, and that is a Black and brown unity on that issue. And it's decades before the US will accomplish that. Now let's go back into America, and we're gonna start in Florida. In Florida, we're looking at indigenous and Black people in the Seminoles, and they have the three Seminole Wars against the U.S., and that's a Black and indigenous, but we're getting to the Black and brown in a minute. So in this fight, the Seminoles were wildly successful against the U.S. and keeping their autonomy. A lot of Africans escaped into Florida. We hear a lot about the Underground Railroad moving into the northern territories, but we don't hear much about the Underground Railroad that goes south into Mexico. So after the Indian Removal Act in 1830, they eventually got to the Seminoles in 1840s, and they moved them, the whole Trail of Tears, moved them into Oklahoma. But there was a hero, John Horse, which was a Black Seminole, and his brother in arms, Mr. Wildcat. They kept going from Oklahoma, and they went around, they crossed the Rio Grande and went into Mexico. The Mexican government gave these escaped slaves and indigenous people, they gave them a land grant for them to have their own property. And the Muskegos Mexicans, they're still there today in Coahuila. They're still there today, descendants of African Americans and indigenous peoples in Mexico. So this Black and brown unity has gone on for a long time, right, in support. So let's jump, in the interest of time, let's jump to the 60s. We have our brother Cesar Chavez, we have Dolores Horta, we have Martin Luther King, all working on the same progress of people of color in this community. And a group that a lot of people don't associate with helping in these processes with the Black Panther Party. The Black Panther Party was helping and working with Cesar Chavez as he's working for labor rights for people who are growers and planters and pickers. And also the Poor People's Campaign with Martin Luther King. They're working in conjunction with these things. Not lastly, but getting close to the end, we're talking about the Brown Berets as well. The Brown Berets, they formed a unity with the Black Panther Party in the early 60s, and that continues today. It had some rocky roads, but we're back solid again today with that unity. So when you look through our history, you'll find that Black and brown people stood together. Malcolm X, when he did a delivery of a speech in New York in 1962, in the background, you'll see this banner, and it says, Negro and Puerto Rican support. community support. So this is not new to us, but we need to emphasize it so that we can make sure that we don't break those ties that bond us together. Lastly, I would like to end with a quote from La Raza. La Raza was a newspaper in 1968. And they said, when it came to, they were asked about Black and Chicano relationships. La Raza newspaper said, our oppression is one. Our dreams are one. Our demands are one. We suffer as one. We react as one. Our struggle is one.
Thank you so much, Brother Yusef.
You're welcome.
That was very enlightening. I have some follow-up questions, but let's hear from Brother Enrique first, and then we'll go from there. Yeah, that was really enlightening. I was under the impression that Black and brown relations is a myth. But anyway, let's go to Mr. Enrique. So you have had almost 4 decades of activism in your life, not only advocating for Latino community, but working for human rights in general. What do you think has changed over the last 40 years?
Well, thank you. And that was very enlightening, Brother Yusef. Thank you for sharing. I've been doing this for a long time. I'm older than both of you. And for me, it's very significant for us to know the history of Black-Brown unity. We have been working together for a long, long time. Of course, there has been differences sometimes, which is only natural. But more importantly, we have worked together. And what I have seen in the 40 years of my struggle in human rights is that unity. I was born and raised in San Diego. I'm very proud to be 100% Mexican, born and raised in San Diego. And there was one time in my life when I didn't live in San Diego. It's when I lived in Los Angeles. And I lived in Los Angeles when we had the terrible incident of Rodney King being beat up and almost killed by the Los Angeles Police Department. That wasn't anything new. What was new, and is very common now, was that it was caught on film. When that happened, we had never had an incident like that caught on film. Now every day we have cell phone cameras, etc. And I'll never forget when I saw that. I was actually in Mexico City, and I was watching on the television screens in this office I was in, and I thought it was another part of the world until I saw the names of the streets. And I thought, oh my God, that's Los Angeles. That's where I live. So when I went back to Los Angeles, we were under martial law in Los Angeles. How am I going to get home from the airport, etc.? It was horrifying. It was outrageous. It wasn't anything new. But I was very, very upset about the horrendous treatment of Mr. Rodney King. So myself and 2 other friends of mine, Armando Charles and Magda Rojas, 2 Mexican people that are friends of mine, we did a big event in the Los Angeles Convention Center called Reencuentro. And we ended up drawing more than 10,000 people there. And it was all about working together. We're all one race, the human race. Not just Black-Brown relations, but also the Korean community and other communities. With that spirit of we are one race, the human race. It was a very successful event. We had music, we had people talking about their different services, healthcare, we had a book festival. And that's what it's all about, bringing people together in a time of struggle. Because the only way, like Dr. Martin Luther King taught us, and Mahatma Gandhi, the only way that you're ever going to come hate with what we saw that was happening to Rodney King is with love. And that's what Reencuentro was all about. I moved back down to San Diego, the city of my birth, and not too long after that, there's 2 new guys that buy the San Diego Padres, John Morris and Larry Lucchino. When they buy the Padres, I get in touch with them, and I said, hey, I understand Larry Lucchino, the president, has a wonderful history of reaching out to the Black community. When he was the president of the Baltimore Orioles, he was very involved with the Black community there because there's a large Black community in Baltimore. And he said, oh, I heard about your work. I know you do a lot of work with the Latino community. And I said, Larry, not only with the Latino community, but the Latino community is the biggest one in this region. But for me, it's important to work with all communities. Next thing you know it, I'm hired by the Padres. I become the vice president of Latino and multicultural marketing. And we start doing all sorts of activities to promote the wonderful cultures of this very diverse world. And I told Larry, I know what it's like to be Mexican, so I pretty much have a handle on how we could celebrate that. But I don't know what it's like to be Black or to be Asian or to be et cetera. So we started doing different types of activities. And what I would do is I would invite members of the various communities to tell us what they wanted to see in our celebration. I'll never forget, I got to know Buck O'Neill, who was from the old Negro Leagues. And we put together a celebration of the Negro Leagues, of their influence in baseball, et cetera. And all of this was promoting the wonderful history of our Black brothers and sisters, Asian brothers and sisters, Latino brothers and sisters, et cetera. And now we come to today, when we have this terrible incident with George Floyd, Breonna Taylor. I just got back from our daily walk for Breonna Taylor every single day. I ask you to join us. We go out there and we walk a 5K, some people run it. And once again, we're working together on these issues because these attacks are often against communities that are underserved, oftentimes communities of color, Black, brown, the gay community, the Muslim community, communities that are underserved and in large part are really not well known by the mainstream. That's why it's important for people like Yusef to give us a historical perspective, you, Sechi, to help us learn more about diversity in the workplace, in school and so forth, because oftentimes the people that are telling us how they feel we should change are not that community. It's typically the white community, typically men, telling us how we should feel as Black women or as brown men, et cetera. And sometimes they don't do it with, I don't think they do it with bad intention. They do it with ignorance. And that's why it's important for us to step up. So what I have seen in these last 40 years is I've seen that we've progressed, and most of that progress actually comes from our youth. The young students, the young Black students that I heard protesting in El Cajon not too long ago, or the Latino students that I heard at the border because of the Border Patrol has children in cages. So it's been the youth. Let's open up those doors to the youth. Let's listen to that youth. Let's be very inclusive. So I have seen progress, but we have a lot of work to do still.
Thank you so much. I'm just gonna segue into your next question. So we have enough time, and if you can take just a minute or two to answer it. My next question for you is, so what is the biggest challenge in this kind of work? You've mentioned a few things, but if you can really summarize for us in a minute, what would you say the biggest challenge is in doing this work? Yeah,
for me, it's for people to know the truth, for people to know what is really taking place, because oftentimes we have a limited source of information, and that source is not really telling you the truth of real information, of real news. We have a multitude of people trying to tell us what is fake news. We got to be very careful about that. We really need to hear the people that are most effective. In today's walk run for Breonna Taylor, Breonna Taylor being a Black woman that was killed in Kentucky several months ago, the only people that were able to speak were Black women. And that's the way it should be. We need to make sure that we're listening to the right people and learning our history like Yusef. So that's one of the biggest challenges, is really getting to the truth so we know how to move forward.
Thank you so much, Mr. Morones. I appreciate that. Brother Yusef, I have one more question for you. And then we can go into Q&A. So what are some of the hurdles that we face with Black and brown relations that we should avoid?
Well, that's an awesome question, because a lot of times the establishment tries to put barriers in between people getting along.
Who is the establishment?
The establishment can be, especially is from white supremacy, which is a division of people within this country, so that we can't focus on the real problem of the nation, which is, white supremacy and white nationalism that won't share the pie with other peoples. So we need to be cognizant of this divide and conquer. We get caught up into who we are as an individual too much, or as a group too much. And that doesn't mean that you shouldn't be proud to be an African American. You should be. It's a lot of things to be proud of. You should be proud of being Latino from South and Central and North America, right? So they should be extremely proud of that, but not at the expense of working together with other peoples. So that is the main hurdle. I think sometimes we break off into our I'm this and they are that kind of attitude. But what we need to bring us together, in my opinion, is reasons to celebrate one another, right? So these reasons that we can have shared heritage, I spoke of a couple of them. For example, February 14th, 1829, the emancipation of the enslaved Africans in Mexico. That's something that we should all, bond on. That. Also, Cinco de Mayo. Cinco de Mayo, a lot of people of African descent don't realize that Cinco de Mayo played a great impact on the American Civil War. Cinco de Mayo was the Battle of Puebla, which was a battle against the French, the first battle. And the French were coming in to undercover help the South in their efforts to win against the war, to preserve the Slavery Institute. And as we mentioned before, slavery was outlawed in Mexico. So they fought against the French, and they kept them at bay long enough that they couldn't help the South. The Battle of Puebla was in 1862, but by 1863, it kept them at bay so long. By 1863, the war was turning in the way of the North, and there was no way back. So if the French would have been successful trying to come through our Mexican brothers, the Civil War might have turned out differently. So we can celebrate those accomplishments together. Juneteenth, which is the 1865, when African Americans finally, they're celebrating their emancipation. African Americans and people of Latino descent, we can celebrate together to get to know one another. So these milestones that we have to celebrate one another, we need to make sure we take those into account. And that way, it makes that when it comes to a George Floyd, it comes to a Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, any of the people who have lost their lives, we can all bond in one as saying, that was me. No matter what their ethnicity was, that was me, and I'm not going to stand for it for any of my brothers and sisters. So it's important for us to get a grasp on this. And if anyone wants to know more about Black and Brown relations, there's a book that I would like to suggest. It's African American and Latinx History. It's by Paul Ortiz. So this book is a great book, and it has more examples of Black and Brown unity, and there are many, many others out there as well.
Thank you so much, Brother Yusef. Could you possibly write the name of that book in the chat, in the chat, please?
Sure.
Thank you. So I am wondering, and this question goes to either of you. So if you all have pointed out many examples of Black and Brown relations in the history of the country. I am wondering, why do you think many people think the Black and Brown coalition is a myth? Why do you think many people say there's no such thing, that Mexicans and other brown people do not support Black causes? That it happens in little pockets in our neighborhoods maybe, but as far as systemically, it's not happening. Why do you think there's been that shift in perception? Is it just a perception, or is it reality?
Well, I think there's a little bit of both. When Senator Obama was running for president, I came out of the national news a lot in Spanish, and people would say, how come Latinos support Hillary Clinton more than Senator Obama?
I heard that too.
Yeah, is it based on race? And I said, a little bit of it maybe, but the main reason is that nobody knows who Barack Obama is. This is when he was a senator. I said, I've been to Illinois many times, and I know that when Senator Obama ran for senator, the Latino community was very supportive of him. And I believe he was Black when that happened. Tom Bradley ran for mayor in Los Angeles. He received overwhelming support from the Latino community. And I know he was Black when that happened. So it's not a matter of race. It's a matter of, why did a lot of people support Hillary more than Barack Obama initially? We didn't know who Barack Obama was. As you may know, I served as an advisor to President Obama. I'm very fond of him. And I know that as people have gotten to know him, overwhelmingly, Latino people support him. Not all, you're always going to have those little pockets, as Yusef said, and people like to use a bullhorn to talk about that, to try to divide. And it will work somewhat, but most people realize that now is the time that we need to be united more than ever. We need to put an end to this white supremacy. We need to call out the Proud Boys and the white supremacists, something the president would not do. So being united, we will have a much louder voice. And as Yusef has taught us, we have been united for a long, long time, the majority. We really need it today.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Brother Yusef. And also, I'd like, if you can point out, is there any truth to that perception? Is there any truth to the fact that some in the Latino community don't support the Black rights and movements, and vice versa?
Well, I was hoping to give that timeline that people can use as an example to show that that's not a exact history of what we have, but Latinos and Blacks, for that matter, are not a monolith, right? They don't all support one thing or all against another. And the same thing with African Americans. We have very right-wing Latinos, and we have very left-wing Latinos and people in the center. And the same thing with African Americans. So some people, they look at their current environment and say it's not happening there. So if it's not happening in your current environment, what are you doing to make sure that that solidarity is there? So we have here in San Diego, we have the Brown Berets who's always showing up to Black issues, and vice versa, how we're showing up at border issues. So here we have a beautiful working relationship. And as I said before, the Black Panther Party of San Diego and the Brown Berets of San Diego, they mended their relationship and strengthened, I should say, their relationship to work together. So we don't have that problem, but you may have a pocket somewhere, some town where let's say a Black gang and a Latino gang are not getting along. That has nothing to do with the Black nation. That has nothing to do with the Latino nation as a nation. In the nation, we're not a monolith. So there are places where we really get along, and we should look back to our heroes and see how they got along with other heroes of Latinx descent. And then use that as our model.
Okay, thank you so much. Now, what do you think is the cost of not getting together more strongly?
There's a lot of strength in numbers, right? So we can work together, and when we don't do that, we can be isolated and destroyed. You know, people try to isolate and destroy. But once we come together, it's like a fist. You know, each one of your fingers, you know, someone can harm a finger. But when you hold it tightly as a fist, they can have a lot of struggle to try to disunify that fist, to try to break any individual finger. And that's how we have to be. The cost is a separation and targeting of individual groups. And then when it comes time for you to say, what about me? There's no one left to stand up for you.
I love that.
I know you had a question that we had discussed about Sechi, so she could give us her opinion. We had a question for her, being a Black woman. Maybe you could ask her that question that we had talked about.
Oh yeah, that's a great a segue to that. Seche, as an African immigrant to America, what has been your experience with your African American brothers and sisters?
Oh, that's an interesting question. So my experience, most of my time, so I've been in America for 15 years, and for the majority of that time, I did not understand my African American brothers and sisters. I was totally oblivious to what's going on. In fact, I thought, I love that you asked that, because yes, we're talking about unity between brown and Black people to work together, but I think we also need much work within the Black community itself. Like a lot of times there's differences in perceptions between even just African immigrants or just any other Black immigrants with the African American community. So like with me, I never thought racism even existed. Like I came here, I got a good college degree. I got a great engineering job for Caterpillar, a Fortune 50 company. Most people treated me nicely. So I was like, where is the racism? What's the problem? And when some people were really mean towards me, I never attributed it to racism. I always thought, oh, they're just having a bad day, or that's just a really stupid person. Or they don't have the right vocabulary. That's why they're using the wrong words. They're maybe not literate enough, and they don't know what words to use. And one of my rationales for that was, I come from a country where we're all Black. Most of it, 99% of us are Black. And yet we treat each other like crap sometimes. So how can you tell me it's about race? If people treat you like crap here, it's not about race, because if it was about race, then we wouldn't treat people like crap in my country sometimes. But I was missing the context and the whole historical context in this country, and how race and racism has been the bedrock of the nation, right? Yes, as humans, we would find reasons to discriminate with each other. In Cameroon, we discriminated with each other based on the language we speak, based on our tribe, based on whatever, based on our economic status. In America, race has been one of the major reasons that people use to discriminate against each other. So it was very narrow-minded of me to base my entire perception of the reality of the country on my single experience, right? My perspective wasn't wrong. It was congruent with my experience, but it was grossly incomplete. And I wasn't in true solidarity with my African-American brothers and sisters, because I had this smug posture of like, oh, I'm where I am because I worked really hard, and y'all are crying, and some of you are crying racism. I don't see it. If you just work hard, you get where you need to go. I was blind to the reality of so many advantages that I had, like how many people's parents can pay their college tuition every year, several tens of thousands of dollars a year, right? Is that a reality for many Americans? No. And so me to think that I came without my own privileges and that my success meant there was no racism was false. And so it took a lot for me to realize, first of all, I had to get unmiseducated, because I think the education I got was so unreal. It was revisionist history, where I thought everything is good, slavery was over, and everyone's good now. When the war was won, everyone was like, yeah, now we think Black people are equals. I did not realize the ways in which slavery evolved and oppression evolved, and which makes it even harder to catch because it's so devious. So anyhow, all that to say, it's been a painful journey for me to acknowledge the truth of the reality of this country and the oppression. I've had to have a lot of therapy just to deal with it, and my own role in it, and the ways in which I perpetuated the racism by the things that I assessed. So it's been a lot of racial recognition, but I can say here I've been brave to go through anyway and take all the steps to do my racial reckoning and to work towards anti-racism. And I love a quote from James Baldwin. It says, not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed unless it is faced. So it's been quite a journey for me to face all the things I've been trying to bury my head in the sand and not face, because I wanted to believe in my world of sunshine, lollipops, and rainbows, which wasn't the case. Now, it was such a privilege for me to be able to experience discrimination and not be able to attribute it to racism and say, oh, they're just having a bad day. That was such a privilege to be so blind to all that. And now my eyes are open. So I think the unity doesn't have to be only between Black and brown. It also has to be between all the different forms of Black and really all the people, not just minority people. It's got to be between white, all the different races. And we have to come together and work together. Yeah.
Thank you.
Anyway, thank you so much.
Great points. Great points. Thank you.
Can the public ask us questions? Is it
Yes,
possible?
please.
I don't know how we open it up for the public
So
to ask us
does
questions.
anyone have any questions? We have like 15 minutes left.
Yeah, if anyone does have questions, feel free to unmute yourself since we have all the attendees up here, and you can just go ahead and ask a question. If you prefer, you can throw it in the comments as well. You can also put your camera on as well. It's totally up to you guys.
Yeah, one of the key reasons we wanted to have this is because we have this election coming up, and we really got to get out there November 3rd. I know that Sechi and Yusef have joined us in the protest that we've had over at Petco Park. Stop the game. While this is going on, sports continues. But Landon Donovan and the San Diego Loyals, they stopped the game. They walked off the field because of these racist comments against one of the athletes, homophobic comments against another athlete. We really need to practice what we preach. Like James Walden said, we've got it looks like we got a question coming in.
Yes, we have two questions coming so far. And if you have questions, please just write them in the chat or unmute yourself or you put on your video. So the first one, how do we combat racism within our communities of color? I love that question. How do we combat racism within our communities of color?
Well, I think education is the biggest tool, the strongest tool. Racism comes from ignorance and fear. So when we have that, even no matter if you're whatever race you are, you know, the ignorance of the other is the thing that causes that fear. So we need relationship, and that's what this is all about. Black and brown relationship, Black and Asian relationship, no matter what it is, Black and Black relationship, right? We need relationship, and we need reason to celebrate, and that tears down these walls. And as long as you have these walls up, people can fill in the blanks with whatever they want to feel about you. If they don't have the experience of what you do, what you celebrate, how you feel, how's your family life, what are your foods, what is your background and your history. So relationship is the biggest destroyer of racism, in my opinion.
Yeah, thank you very much. So are you saying we should go in our communities and build this one-on-one relationships?
Yes, we should build relationships one-on-one and as a community. You know, doing things together, sports together, picnics together, celebrations together, music. You know, people come together with music and food, whatever it is. Share space.
Do you think doing those things together would really help us understand the deep historical context? And I ask because I was always a super outgoing person. I had friends of every race, every creed, every tribe. And I did not understand my own African-American brothers and sisters. And I had many of them as friends, and I shared spaces. And, you know, and I never knew I had prejudices. I never knew that I didn't understand their pain. I never even thought they had any pain, right? Is it enough to just share spaces? Or how do we leverage that shared spaces, those shared spaces, to actually bring about transformation of hearts and minds and systems?
Well, that's a good point, and
because we could just share spaces and sing Kumbaya, and that's what I was doing when I started diversity and inclusion work. I thought it was about holding hands and singing Kumbaya.
Yes,
but now it's a lot deeper.
I would like to use you as an example. Like at first you weren't aware, right? But that relationship space opened the door. The relationship space is not going to cure anything. It opens the door to hopefully you'll run across a brother like me or a sister like you, who's going to educate people. And in the same way with our Latino brothers, same thing with our Asian brothers and sisters, but that door can't be opened unless you share space. So that's the next step to sharing space, but you have to get there first.
That's absolutely true. Okay, thank you so much. Did you have anything else to add to that, Enrique, or should I go on to the next question?
Why don't we go on to the next question?
Okay.
I think I saw something from Alberto Ochoa. I'm not sure.
Yeah, so what are positive and negative consequences of the present U.S. policy of immigration to Black and brown and other people of color?
I think that's another example where we need to take down the veil, work with the other communities of color to let them know what is really going on. When we see that the Kumeyaay burial sites are being destroyed by the Border Patrol, we need to join our Native American brothers and sisters, empathize with them, talk to them, tell them that we feel so bad about what is taking place. And one of the greatest examples that I can think of right now, whether it has to do with the, the demonstrations, is precisely the demonstrations. Black Lives Matter. When you see these protests that are going on, you see a multitude of colors of people, and that's beautiful. Most of them are younger people, but that to me is something very encouraging. that we're getting to know each other. We're getting to hear somebody's pain. Like this morning, it was Black women talking about how they feel. As a man, I cannot express that. Plus, I'm not Black. All of us come from Mother Africa. We need to realize that. And we also need to realize that there will be divisions within our own communities. And sometimes we're not going to overcome that. But the majority can definitely get to know each other better, and join in the struggle together. We each have our respective organizations. Gente Unida, you can find out information at genteunida.net. You have the North County Racial Justice Coalition. You have Activist San Diego. All of us are doing our best to get to know each other, stressing the importance of getting out there and voting on November 3rd and not being silent. Because if you're silent, it's almost like you agree. And don't let these distractions distract you. Keep the eye on the prize. Let's remember what John Lewis taught us. Good trouble. We got to get into good trouble. We cannot be silent. We cannot be silent. We need to get out there, raise our voice peacefully, as has been done, and get out there and vote on November 3rd. So join our organization. Yeah, we welcome everybody.
Thank you. Speaking of organizations, there's a question here from Ashley. Are there any organizations in San Diego that are advancing or improving Black and Brown relations?
Yes, and Enrique just mentioned a few, ASD and the Racial Justice Coalition.
What is ASD?
Activist San Diego.
Okay.
And Activist San Diego, they also have a website, Racial Justice Coalition of San Diego, the North County Equity and Justice Coalition, and so many others. I mean, if you start there, these are hubs of other organizations that come together, and there are many organizations as coalitions as part of that. So we're all singularly minded as far as the unification of all peoples.
Yeah, thank you so much. And Activist San Diego, which I'm the board president of, we serve as like a hub for if you're new to activism and you want to get involved and you don't know where to start, you can come and we can direct you to the right places. We're working with other organizations in the community to try to make sure to plug people in with whatever they're interested in. So so you can start there and you get directed to the right places. And then I wanted to touch on the answer you also gave to the first question: how do we combat racism within our communities of color? I wanted to add to that about the education piece you mentioned. Yeah, it is so important for us to understand even the histories, the roots of some of the things we consider culture today. Like, for example, in my culture in Cameroon, it's normal for people, especially women, to bleach their skin. It's like the beauty standard is looked at. If the more lighter skin you are, the narrower your nose, the smaller your lips, that's more beautiful. So those are white features. And we pass that off as normal. And when two female kids are born, one is dark skin, one is light skin, we're like, oh, this one will have all the guys after her, this one will have so much success. You, the dark skin one, you better have a lot of brains, because that would be the only thing that would save you in this life. So, and we keep passing that on from generation to generation as normal. Now in the community, we call it colorism. But if we don't understand the white supremacist roots of some of these things we call culture, then we continue to perpetuate them, and we continue to do ourselves and our kids and our grandkids some disadvantage without even realizing it. Even a lot of things that happen within the Black community here in America that we pass on as culture, a lot of it is unhealed and unacknowledged trauma that happens as culture, and we say, oh, that's just the way Black people are. No, it's we use, those are the effects of oppression, those are the consequences, and then when we see those, we use it to justify oppression, which is now double or triple oppression. Okay, I want to take another question. Have you seen a difference between the generations in the Black and Brown communities in terms of racial prejudice? My perception is that the younger generation today sees people as people without the color of their skin being important, but their parents may not feel the same. How can this be changed? This is from Ava Batsva. Thank you.
Yes, thank you for that question, and I agree. The younger generation is much more in tune. In my 40 years of doing this type of work, we've had a lot of student groups come to visit. And when I take them out there, whether it's visiting the migrant community, visiting the shelters, their eyes are open. And I hear their stories. They start crying. They say, I never realized this was actually taking place. And they tell me, my parents are very conservative. They listen to this particular type of broadcast and so forth. And I tell them, when you go back home, you're not going to be able to necessarily change their mind, but you can change the world because you need to be that change in the world. And somebody was also asking about, how about when you want to speak up, but you're intimidated by speaking up because you're going to get, you could get yourself in trouble, whether it's violence against you or being singled out. So we do a lot of training on that because one of the other organizations is the organization that I represent, which is Gente Unida, which is United People. And we just had a forum on that very topic, on how you deal with these issues, how you respond, how you take action with not causing more friction in that environment. Without a doubt, the youth, they're the ones that are doing it way better than my generation did. When you talk about the environment, you just listen to Greta from Scandinavia, when she's talking about saving the environment. When you talk about women's rights, you listen to Malala from Pakistan. These are young women telling us how to do it right. We got to listen to them, and we got to listen to each other. And that's why this unity with Black and Brown is so important. Let's get out the vote November 3rd. Join us. We have 3 organizations. We're all friends. We do things together. I'm with GenteUnida.net. There's Activist San Diego, and there's the North County Racial Justice Coalition.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So I want to take one more question. Sorry, did you want to add something real quick? We have 3 minutes
I just want to add that make sure the youth understand that you're standing on the shoulders of your parents. So be careful on the way you express that and the way you see it. The pressures that your parents went through, you don't have to go through because of their sacrifice. And they, as youth, when they were a youth, the pressures they went through, they didn't have to go through because of the sacrifice of their parents. So make sure you understand that in a historical way that, yes, your freedom of thinking and their freedom of access is based on your parents' sacrifice. And there's something you can learn from them. At the same time, you advance the needle. So you're moving the discussion forward, but don't forget that you're standing on the shoulders of those giants.
Absolutely. Now, the last question from Maria Maria B. How do I overcome the fear to speak out when doing so makes me a target for verbal or physical abuse? We have like 2 minutes left.
I think Enrique already answered that question in a combination. I think he read the question and he folded it into his answer. Is that right, Enrique?
That's right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and join us. We all have activities going on. Right now I'm heading to every Saturday we do the protest against the children that are being held in cages. That's in front of the county administration building. Every day we have the Walk for Brianna on 8th and B at 8 o'clock in the morning. I know Activist San Diego and Racial Justice Coalition have events on a regular basis. They're on our websites. Check them out. Join us.
That's wonderful. Any last final thoughts with the last minute or so we have from any of you?
I put the book title in the chat, and hopefully, people can get some inspiration from those books. And please feel free to contact us, and get more information.
Thank you. Thank you so very much. And remember, again, I love this James Baldwin quote. Not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed unless it is faced. So whether it is the divisions within our own communities of color, or it is the oppression that's coming from without, or the internalized oppression from within, we have to face it, and we have to be honest about it, and we have to work those things out if we ever want any true success in really changing our outcomes.
That's
so
right.
Thank you all very much. Any final words?
Love is an action, not just a word, and love overcomes hate.
Thank you. Love overcomes hate, and I also want to add, we should go beyond love and add justice and equity. Because sometimes we don't treat those we love well, even like abusers love the people they abuse. So let's love and go beyond love to equity and justice.
Wow, thank you so much. This was an incredible discussion. I appreciate Seche and all the panelists, Yusef, Enrique, thank you for being here, the attendees. We've got 1 hour left of PolitiFest, so hop on to your next session. Again, follow along with hashtag PolitiFest 2020 and look out for the recordings we'll be sending of this so you can watch it again and share with your friends. Thanks so much.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, the amazing panelists.